So, dear viewer, I have a question for you. Can you think of an intro for a very beautifully designed female Warframe that can split into 5 very beautifully designed female Warframes without it sounding dirty? Yeah, me neither. Mirage is, in my opinion, one of the best descriptions out there. Just listen to this. Mysterious and mischievous, Mirage manipulates the spectrum of light to dazzle her foes. With deceitful mirror images, colorful photokinetic displays, and explosive pranks up her sleeve, every battlefield becomes a stage for her next performance. I love it. But anyway, how do we get Mirage? Well, you will slowly build her up throughout the Hidden Messages questline, which I don't want to spoil, so if you want Mirage, just go and do the Hidden Messages quest. Now, Mirage is very squishy. She only has 80 health and shields, which go up to 240 at rank 30, and only 65 armor, which makes her one of the squishiest Warframes in the game. But she does have 150 power, which goes up to 225 at rank 30, and she has a sprint speed of 1.2, which makes her one of the fastest Warframes in the game. She also comes with a D and a V polarity and a dash polarity in the aura slot. Her abilities focus around the idea of light and darkness and the interaction between them, and she can also booby trap her surroundings, which, while not the most useful of things, can be pretty funny at times. Now, before I talk about the abilities, I just want to say that all the augments for Mirage can be obtained by either reaching the rank of Maxim under the Abyss of Hexis or the rank of Genius under Cephalon Suda, and they will cost you 25,000 standing. So Mirage's first ability is called Hall of Mirrors, where Mirage projects 4 holographic mirror images that follow and mimic her actions for 25 seconds. The holograms will deal 20% of the current weapon total damage, they are invulnerable to damage themselves, and they will draw enemy attention. And the damage of the holograms is affected by power strength. Now, unfortunately, not all 4 holograms are able to fire at once. Only 2 of them can fire at the same time. But the damage of the holograms will be redistributed to these 2 holograms. So instead of having 4 holograms, each doing 20% of the total weapon damage, you will have 2 holograms each doing 40% of the weapon damage. And the holograms remain fixed in position around Mirage. They do not interact with terrain, so they will not jump up ledges or they will not bump into walls. They will simply clip through all terrain, which with some good positioning may allow you to fire through walls and obstacles. And as expected, all the mods that you have on your weapon will also be applied to the weapons used by the holograms. And finally, if a hologram kills an enemy, the affinity will not go to the weapon, but it will go to Mirage instead. Now, the augment for Hall of Mirrors is called Hall of Malevolence, where the damage of your doppelgangers, or your holograms, is increased by 5% every time you kill an enemy. Now, this stacks up to 10 times, so they can do up to 50% more damage, and it resets when you recast Hall of Mirrors. And this augment is not affected by mods, it's only affected by the stats of Hall of Mirrors. And just on a side note, this is probably the best way of increasing weapon damage, because, well, you're firing 3 weapons instead of 1. Mirage's second ability is called Sleight of Hand, where Mirage booby traps all nearby interactive objects within a 40-meter radius for 18 seconds. Now, as expected, the radius is affected by power range and the duration is affected by power duration. Now, this ability has to be one of the most situational, kind of useless, and also broken abilities in the entire game. And I say this because it relies on the enemy AI to interact with the object once you booby-trapped it, which is something they don't really like doing, especially if they already spotted you. The only thing they're gonna interact with once they've spotted you are the control consoles to trigger the alarm. But here's the thing, when you booby-trap a control console, once they touch it, it's supposed to do 200 blast damage and knock them on their ass. But that one doesn't work. It just explodes and they're like, "Whoa, what happened?" And they just walk away. So the only thing that could work and could be really useful is broken. Now, this ability can be useful in very niche situations. For instance, if you have containers all over the place, you can booby trap them, shoot them, and they will act like a flashbang, so they will blind enemies within a certain radius. And believe it or not, I actually managed to kill a couple of enemies using this ability, because if you booby trap a locker and an enemy approaches it, it will open up, poof in their face, and kill them, which is pretty damn funny, but once again very situational, and kind of useless in most situations. Now, there are some interactions that are pretty useful. For instance, security cameras will turn off, turrets will start firing at everything, and the Orokin Void laser consoles in Void Defense will have their cooldown cut down in half while they're booby-trapped, which is pretty good. But overall, it is very situational, which means most of the time it's not gonna do a damn thing. Now, the augment for Sleight of Hand is called Explosive Legerdemain, where pickups will be turned into proximity mines that will deal 250 damage with a 60% proc chance. Now, the damage is affected by power strength, but unfortunately the explosion radius is not affected by power range. Now, ammo drops will do cold damage, affinity orbs will do toxin damage, energy orbs will do electricity damage, and health orbs will do heat damage. Now, this augment would be pretty good if it also didn't destroy the pickups in the process, because once they explode, you cannot pick them up. So only use this if you're a big fan of running out of ammunition in endless missions. Everything about this ability is just bad. Even the augment is just bad. Just don't use this. Mirage's third ability is called Eclipse, where Mirage adapts to the lighting conditions of her surroundings, gaining a maximum of 200% weapon damage while bathed in light, or reducing incoming damage by a maximum of 75% and also reducing enemy accuracy while enveloped in shadows. And this effect lasts for 20 seconds. And the amount of weapon damage or damage reduction you get is completely dependent on where you're standing and how much light is shining on you. Now, if you're standing in the shadows, Mirage will fade away and there'll be smoke coming off of the Warframe, which indicates that you have a lot of damage reduction. And if you're standing in bright light, she will have a white reflective surface on her, which indicates that you have a lot of bonus weapon damage. Now, the effects of Eclipse, so both bonus weapon damage and bonus damage mitigation, are affected by power strength. However, the damage mitigation cannot exceed 95% under any circumstances. And the duration is of course affected by power duration, and this ability can also be recast while it's already active. And unfortunately, the bonus weapon damage from Eclipse does not apply to the holograms from Hall of Mirrors. The augment for Eclipse is called Total Eclipse, where allies within 5 meters will gain 100% benefit from Eclipse as well. Now, unfortunately, in order to maintain this buff, allies have to stay within this 5-meter range, otherwise they're simply gonna lose it. And it doesn't matter if the allies are standing in light or shadows, because it simply shares the buff that Mirage currently has. And the range of Total Eclipse is affected by power range, although it is not affected very much. And Total Eclipse can also share the buff to companions and Kubros, which are more often than not outside of the range of Total Eclipse, so it's not going to share it very often. And finally, Total Eclipse can act as power strength for certain Warframes and certain abilities, because it only affects physical damage, not elemental damage. So it will not affect, for instance, Volt's Shock, but it will affect Ash's Shuriken. And Mirage's fourth and final ability is called Prism, where Mirage generates a prism in her hands and launches it outward at a speed of 5 meters per second. The prism is armed with 20 lasers that track and damage enemies within 30 meters, and each laser inflicts a minimum of 125 radiation damage per tick while Mirage is in the shadows, and a maximum of 250 radiation damage per tick while Mirage is bathed in light. And each laser will damage an enemy roughly 4 times per second. Now, Prism has activation costs, it drains 10 energy per second, and it also has duration. And the duration is of course affected by power duration, as you might expect. Minimum and maximum laser damage, as well as the number of lasers, are all affected by power strength. The laser acquisition range is affected by power range. The activation cost is affected by power efficiency, and the drain cost is affected by both efficiency and duration. Now, if you already have a prism flying and bouncing around and you reactivate the ability, it will detonate the prism and it will blind enemies within 25 meters for 15 seconds. The blind duration is affected by power duration, and the radius is affected by power range. And even though the lasers will not go through terrain, the blind, when you detonate it, will. And finally, if you have Hall of Mirrors active and you cast Prism, the holograms will mimic the casting animation, but they will not throw additional prisms. And on a side note, one enemy can only be hit by one laser at a time. If you only have one enemy, only one laser will chip at them instead of all 20 of them targeting him at once. Now, if you know me, you know that I love Mirage. I love her toolkit, and I absolutely love the way she looks. And if you need a big boost to weapon damage, Mirage is the way to go, because the combination of Hall of Mirrors with Hall of Malevolence and Total Eclipse while you're standing in light is gonna give you ridiculous amounts of weapon damage. She isn't the beefiest Warframe in the game, she is very low on stats, but Hall of Mirrors kind of compensate for it, because enemies tend to target your holograms rather than you, which gives you a lot of survivability to an extent, because Bombards and Scorches have a lot of splash damage, so it doesn't matter if they target you or your hologram, they're probably gonna gonna kill you in one shot anyway. Now the thing that elevates Mirage above many other Warframes for me is the build diversity. You can run a Hall of Mirrors build with Hall of Malevolence for a lot of weapon damage, you can run Total Eclipse build to be a support frame, or you can run a Prism damage build to shred everything on a map because it has so much bloody range, or you can run a crowd control build with Prism where you just cast Prism and you detonate it right away, which will basically just stun everything on a map. And let's not forget about the fun factor with Mirage that you get from Hall of Mirrors, because it just amplifies the ludicrousness of certain weapons. Because, you know, you can either fire 2 grenades with Toncord that has multi-shot, or you can put it on a Mirage and fire 6 grenades with the Toncord that has multi-shot. And this extends to so many weapons. Whether it be the Ogres, Ignis, the Dracoon is a pretty funny one, Phage, or Static Ore, Sonic Ore, basically every weapon that's kind of ridiculous on its own will be turned up to 11 when you put it on Mirage. I can't even tell you how many times I got a new weapon. I was like, this is kinda, oh my god, Mirage. And I put it on Mirage and I run through a mission and laugh hysterically as I carpet bomb the entire tile set. It's brilliant, it's a ton of fun. So I would definitely recommend you get Mirage. It's an incredibly powerful Warframe, the build diversity is amazing, and the fan factor you get from Hall of Mirrors is simply unmatched by any other Warframe. Okay? And that's it for the video, so I thank you very much for watching, as always, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.